welcome. Since you're here, I'm going to assume that at some point in time, the thought, maybe I should DM, has crossed your mind. If you're anything like me, it was probably followed by a bunch of negative thoughts trying to convince you not to, or that you didn't know enough to start, or that you needed to keep working on it until you would be ready. Today, right here, we're going to give you the advice you need so that you can push past that nonsense. Hey friends, my name's Timothy, though some people do call me Tim. I'm a professional dungeon master, run over 300 games a year. And so if you want to improve your game of Dungeons & Dragons, I'm here to help. And if you're interested in doing just that, then you should probably do all the liking and subscribing bits down below, eh? Let's get to it. The first objection to becoming a dungeon master, and thus the first thing that we need to know, is how much do you need to know the rules in order to be the dungeon master? The reassuring facts are that, honestly, you don't need to know that much. You do obviously need to have a basic understanding of how the game is played and how the rounds progress, the normal flow of play of you setting a scene, somebody declaring what they want to do in that scene, and then you resolving that situation with them. Doing that over and over again is really just what Dungeons & Dragons is, and it's not that hard to catch and grasp. The combat rules do take a little bit more understanding, but you don't have to have a perfect knowledge, particularly not if you're going to be DMing for a group that's played before, or if you're playing with even one mentor around. It's okay to have a rules lawyer at the table who knows all the rules and corrects you, and you just take that for what it's worth of somebody helping you to grow and be able to do this new thing. And don't be afraid to be wrong or to stick to your guns and say, you know, I think this is how it is. We're going to go with this for now, and I'll look it up after the game. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. We'll move ahead with the correct rules next time. Players are pretty forgiving about these sorts of things, and while we can feel a lot of pressure to know absolutely all the ins and outs, a basic understanding of how the game flows and a basic understanding of the combat rules is enough to get started. As long as you are keeping yourself open to learning as you go and to improvising based upon the things that are happening around you in the game, you're gonna do a great job. And frankly, the worst D&D that I've ever played in was still a lot of fun. Once you know what you need to know what you need to have in order to run a game of Dungeons & Dragons. Nowadays, honestly, you don't need a whole heck of a lot. Access to the core rules can be found for free on D&D Beyond and in plenty of other places. If you've got the core rule books, then you're pretty much set also, and any additional books beyond that is just gravy and complication. Don't worry about it on your first time around. Stick to the basic rules of the Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual. You don't even really need the Dungeon Master's Guide in order to be able to run a game of Dungeons & Dragons. And then a set of polyhedral dice in order to be able to run the game by playing and rolling d20s. And most people would probably say that it's necessary to have a battle map or a virtual tabletop in order to present these situations to your players, though you can in fact play entirely in theater of the mind and have a great time doing it. If you're playing in a physical space, miniatures might seem like they're a must, but again, nobody minds if you're using coins, bottle caps, or just little X's drawn on a Chessex battle map or a piece of paper, for crying out loud. Whatever it takes to get the game going, you don't really need a heck of a lot. Of course, there are an absolute ton of materials out there to try and make things easy for you. Simple, free virtual tabletops like Owlbear Radio. You could use Roll20 or my personal favorite, Foundry Virtual Tabletop, in order to run games across great distances, giving you all the tools to be able to run the game, and in a lot of cases, the rules too. D&D Beyond is great for character creation in order to bind everything together and keep it in one place, and you can even roll all of your dice on character sheets from there if you want, and not even need to buy a set of dice even if you're playing in meat space. Don't overwhelm yourself on your first try around as a DM, and don't don't overdo it on too many of these different tools. Just find one that seems as easy as you can, and if it gets complicated and you're feeling frustrated or worried that you're not going to be able to measure up, then consider tossing that tool out the window and not worrying about it until you've had a couple of experiences. You can always run theater of the mind, which just involves describing a situation and then resolving the player's choices when they tell you what they want to do in it. When it comes to choosing your first game, I'm a little bit on the opinionated side regarding this. I really feel that it's important that you start with a simple, preferably one-shot adventure for your first game. If possible, pre-generated characters so that you don't need to review people's stuff is a great way to go, and some kind of self-contained story that is just going to be quick and easy for you to dive into with your friends, have fun, and then throw it away with no consequences is a great way to start learning how to play Dungeons & Dragons. You can certainly dive in the deep end of all the long-term campaigns and slowly improve as you go, but for your very first game, I really recommend doing something quick that you can enjoy for a brief period of time, throw away, and then start your real campaign afterwards. Getting that first game or two in just doing it is going to advance your skill level so much faster, and there are going to be some mistakes that you make that maybe you would prefer weren't lingering in the back of your consciousness. Knowing that you don't have to prepare for another 30 sessions after these ones can make it a lot less intimidating to run that game and just go where the story leads. If you're looking for published adventures in order to start yourself off, weirdly enough, I personally would not start with the starter sets that are put out by Wizards of the Coast because they have a more campaign-like feel to them, and in some cases there might be a few interesting choices that have been made by the game designers that are a little more punishing than we would like. Some suggestions that I would offer would be from the Candlekeep Mysteries anthology, The Joy of Extra-Dimensional Places, only replace the mimic with an animated object. Sunless Citadel from the Yawning Portal is likewise an enjoyable option, though it's more of a 3 or 4 session sort of thing, but a great introduction to dungeon crawling in the classical sense. Finally, from the Sinister Secrets of Saltmarsh in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh book, The Haunted House is a lot of fun and a simple 1 to 2 session adventure. Once you've gathered the basic materials that you need, overcome your hurdles for play about how much you need to know, and you've run yourself a one-shot, what next? First, I'd suggest hitting the subscribe button on this channel. My goal here at this channel is to help you improve your game of Dungeons & Dragons no matter where you're starting, and I am always willing to help in any way that I can. Secondly, I would suggest checking out some of those starter sets that I said you shouldn't do for your first game, like the Lost Mines of Phandelver or the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. They're much more manageable as a campaign after you've had your first critical hit or critical fumble than they are as your very first game, because you just need to have that opportunity to throw everything away after the first couple of sessions. I gotta say, I'm downright excited that you watched through this video and you are interested in running a game of Dungeons & Dragons. I would love to hear about it, so leave me a message telling me how it goes, and if any of my advice wasn't on the mark for you, then I'd likewise love to know. Similarly, it's my promise and pledge that if you have a question about Dungeons & Dragons and you post it, I will do everything I can to make sure that I respond to you and help you through it, whether that's by creating an entire video so that you can understand the concept that you're working on, or just by responding in the comment box. There's a wide community of wonderful creators, and we're all excited to see more people come into the hobby. So don't be afraid to ask, because we're here to help. Thanks so much for watching, and happy first adventure.